Hi, I'm Melisa Nielsen with Waldorf Essentials. Let's get started with our topic. So I have notes because this is one of those, like, there's some technical stuff, so I put it all in notes. So we're going to talk about transcripts and test prep. So first I want to say, stop stressing. Take a deep breath. For heaven's sake. I've been at this a long time. And honestly, and I know a lot of it comes from the confidence that I have and my temperament and the fact that I'm pretty dang hard-headed. And if somebody said to me, you can't do this, I'd be like, oh, watch me. But I want you to know that this should not be stressful activity. Keeping track of your schooling and launching a child into adulthood is not stressful activity. It only is if you tell yourself that it is. So I want to start with that. I want you to take a deep breath and not be freaked out about it. So I have 5 children, 3 are adults. Well, those 3 that are adults only got to be adults by the work that we did together. And I definitely cannot take credit for all of it. In fact, I have to say happy birthday to my second child. Today is his birthday. This is his first day in his 20s today. So I just want to say that it's not as stressful as you think. So we're going to sort of break down some of the pieces. And I will tell you that for the first long time, I didn't even pay any attention to any of this. So it really highly depends on the governing body where you live as to whether or not you have to really think about a lot of this. So in the 3 states that I've homeschooled in, I've not had a problem at all. So we homeschooled in Idaho, we homeschooled in Utah, and now we're homeschooling in California. California has definitely more regulations than Utah and Idaho, and Utah had some more regulations than Idaho. So in Idaho, we could do anything we wanted. Nobody cared. And so for a long time, I didn't really think about it. And then when we moved to Utah, I had to start thinking about it a little bit. But even that was very low level. And we just had to sort of let the governing body know that we were homeschooling. It was not a big deal as far as like, oh, you have to do X, Y, and Z. In California, we have to register each year as a private school. Now, there is another option. You can join a charter school in California, and there's like charter umbrellas that give you some state funds. But then you have to also play their game, which is like, testing and meeting with an instructor every week or every month and all of those things. And each school is different. Each school has different requirements. So we didn't want to go down that road. We'd had all this freedom, and I wanted to continue to have freedom. So we don't participate in a charter. But I did want to make sure that we are complying. So the state requires us to take attendance. The state requires us to teach what they would be taught in a California school. So that's just subjects. That's not like you have to teach everything. They just want to know that if they're certifying you as a private school, that you are teaching the same subjects that they deem would be important for a child to know. And you don't even have to teach them in their order. So the Waldorf curriculum is not a problem. In fact, I will venture to say that I've not found, and you can correct me and go, hey, I'm having this problem, but I've not found a governing body that when it comes down to it and you give them apples for apples, that they have a problem with the Waldorf curriculum. So it's all in how you frame it. It's all in how you put it together. So when it comes to keeping a transcript for the lower grades, and I'm talking not high school, so 8th grade and under, that is completely up to you as to whether or not you want to do that. I have done it here and there for, and I do it more regularly now because we are in California. But often, like our kids were in karate, and there was a special patch that they got to earn if they were on honor roll. and or if they had done some specific things in school. And so if you have situations like that, then you might want to keep a transcript of what they're doing. You definitely want to keep track of what they're doing. So if you are using our Planning for Peace journal, there's a place for you to do that. There's a transcript place in the back of the Planning for Peace journal for you to just sort of keep track of what you got through. And so I would do that. I would make sure that you're completing the plans that you put out. So and not stressing about it, but you know, this is kind of more of a brass tacks conversation about accountability for yourself. So you need to make sure that you put together, or when you're putting things together, that you're actually finishing what you start, so that you have good follow through. So with that in mind, you know, just write it down. If you're keeping the Planning for Peace journal, what I would do is you know, there's a box at the bottom of the page for each block that says complete. So when you complete it, check it off. So that way you know, and you can always go back and easily keep those records. So so there's that. I definitely recommend keeping, you know, just keeping something. The other thing that we've done in years past is you know, in our curriculum, there's like a year at a glance in the front. I always have a copy of that in my homeschool notebook. And that way, that year at a glance, it's easy for me if any governing body ever were to come to us and say, what are you teaching? I can say, look, here you go. This is it. I don't have to be stressed out about it. I just have that printed out, and then they can see what the topics were for the year. And that's super helpful as far as like just knowing off the top of your head or off the cuff, you know, like what it is that you're teaching if somebody were to ask. So there's that piece for lower school. But honestly, most of the time, you don't have to keep a ton of records for lower school. I always sort of laugh. What age was it, Daddy, that it was like our permanent record? We always had, I don't know for you guys, but when we were in school, it was always about your permanent record.
My guess says there's no sound now, but no, that was like a high school thing.
It was just high school. Like if you screwed up, it was going on your permanent record. So this whole like permanent record thing is a lie. Like there's no, it's silly. It's very silly. And of course your permanent record, this record that they keep in high school, is definitely something that you want to pay attention to. So in paying attention to that, in high school, you want to keep better records and keep tighter records. So I'm going to sort of read you some resources that have been helpful to us. I would definitely say that it is worth the HSLDA, like getting.org, getting to know their site. They have a lot of really good information there. So it's the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. And so I think that even if you're not a member, it's a good idea to like know your way around their site a little bit. And really and truly, it starts with, what does your state require? And if you're not in the United States, what does your government require? Like having those. So often people will say to me, oh, I'm just so worried because I understand I have to do all this stuff. And I said, well, you need to get exactly the words that you need. Exactly. Don't be stressed about, what you don't know. Get exactly the terminology that you need. Once you have that exactly, and you know exactly what it is that they want, then you can craft from there. Then you can move things around in your own schedule, on your own schooling if need to be, to make sure that you meet those exact words. But you want to know exactly. You don't want to mess around with maybe this is required or maybe this isn't. You want to know exactly. And I would say for anybody that's using a charter school, same thing. I would say, what exactly do you need from me? I would not, because there's a power struggle that can happen between, because we belonged to a charter years ago. So I understand I understand sort of what you have to do. You have to sort of pony up the work samples and stuff like that, which I get. You should be doing the work anyway. But you need to ask them, what exactly do you need from me? And only give that. And I would say up front, you tell me exactly what you need and I will provide you exactly what you need. I'm not going to provide you a bunch of extra. I will provide you exactly what you need. And if they ask for things that seem to be over the top or out of the ordinary, I would say, can you show me where it says that I have to do this? You know, I have a good friend, and she was with one charter, and they kept telling her, you have to go to this class and this, and you have to use this resource and that resource. And I finally said, hey, you need to ask them, what exactly is required of me? And when she asked them that, they were like, well, none of this is required of you. So you want to know exactly. There often you get, because of the nature of sort of being an educational specialist or the teacher, the contact teacher with the charter, they want to help. And so they're like constantly brainstorming, how can I help this family? How can I help the, and so to their credit, they're trying to do what they think is right. But if it doesn't flow with what you have on your mind, then I would just say, sorry, I'm going to opt out of that. So again, make sure that you know what your state actually requires of you. That's the very first hurdle. Because without that, you don't really know what you should be collecting. You don't know what data you need. So once you know that first hurdle, then you've got that one under control. I think that some people have said to me, well, my child decided to go to school in high school, and I took them to the high school, and they said they wouldn't take them. And I've never heard of that. I think that you could go, I would be like, where's your supervisor? That's what I would say. I want to talk to the next person in line, because if you are coming from lower school and you have, especially if you have good notes on what you've been doing, you can present them. My child is literate. If you'd like to test them so that you can see where they are, but this is where we are. I have not found a school yet. Now, what will happen is if you've gone through too many years of high school, they might be like, but your credits won't transfer. Definitely have heard that one. But when it comes to like the lower school credits into the upper school, that's often not the problem. So call the school. If you have a child in 5th grade right now and you think your child is going to want to go to high school, call the district office now and say, I'm a homeschooler. I'm preparing for my child to enter in 9th grade. What do you need from me? They will probably say that they need to know what your child's been working on, but they might say nothing. They might just say, show up at registration day. That has been, excuse me, my experience more often than not. When my middle son, the one whose birthday's today, went to high school, he had already done 9th grade at home. So he went to high school in 10th grade. And my ex-husband, in his infinite wisdom, did not give him the transcript that I had written. I had spent so much time writing for him. And so then when my son was in 11th grade, he was kind of freaking out. He said, the counselor told me I don't have enough credits to graduate. And so I got on the phone with his counselor. And the counselor was like, what? We don't have an extra transcript for him. And I said, oh, it's coming right now. And I sent it. And once the other transcript was there, he didn't have to take classes last semester. He was able to just take shop and I think yoga or something silly. And just, you know, it was just very, because I had kept such good records, he had everything he needed. Another thing, when my daughter that just graduated last year, she and I were sort of debating on what she was going to do. And the school wasn't going to take her transcripts. She was in 11th grade. She had been, homeschooled for too long. Plus, we looked at the transcript. And in the state of California, you only have to have 13 credits to graduate, which I don't understand because every other state is much higher than that. She had 22. She already had enough. And so, we were able to write a transcript and she was done. So don't stress so much about this. What you need to find out is, what do you need? Now, if you're worried about college entrance, and you've got a child, say you're in 7th, 8th grade, and you're trying to sort out, okay, what are the next 4 years need to look like so that we can be ready to go to college? I would start calling colleges and asking them, what's your homeschool policy? Most of the time, often, they'll say a transcript and an ACT score. So you want to just keep those things in mind. So we have a place that we use for transcripts, but we found an online resource Then, and they have like a monthly program where you can just sign up and they'll just keep track of everything all through high school, or do what we did. Sign up for a month, get it all done, get the transcript. They send you an official transcript. It's an official one. It's all laid out the way colleges need to see it. It's all laid out perfectly. And then if you're a homeschooler, you can do, if you just Google homeschool graduation certificates or homeschool diplomas, there are companies that you can send them your transcript and they will send you a diploma. So your child has a nice framed diploma. So let's see, nitty gritty. And I'm going to say nitty gritty, and I'm going to kind of put it in quotes because it depends on who you ask. Approximately 1 credit hour equals approximately 120 to 180 hours of instruction. Now, if you're going, oh my gosh, are my lessons only last? In high school, they should last longer. In high school, you've got, when you're working on main lesson, sometimes you're doing 3 hours of work a day. So you want to really look at what it is that you're diving into. And don't just count the time that you're just together. Also count the time that they're working on some things too. So the idea is that it's a minimum of 3 hours a week per semester. And they have, I was going to say there is a link about this on the HSLDA site. And so you can go and look at all the information about sort of keeping track, because there's a couple of different ways to do it. You want to count everything when you're in high school, everything, because when they're in public school, they count everything. Driver's ed is counted. You want to count everything. When I was in high school, I had so many credits of of community service that I had to provide. So make sure that if you are doing community service, a community service is a great way to sort of get some humanities credits in there. So community service needs to be counted. Driver's ed needs to be counted. Any classes you took that they took outside of from where you are, like that weren't from you, they need to be counted. Like with our daughter, she had taken a yoga certification class. We counted those hours. When my son was in 9th grade, he worked at a bicycle collective. We counted those hours because that was like free work. It wasn't work that he was paid for, and he was learning a skill. So, definitely you want to count everything. And when you're sitting down and doing your planning, like if you've got a child that's in 7th or 8th grade and you're planning for the next couple of years, I would definitely look at, okay, what can we add in there? What besides the curriculum, that what I'm teaching, can we add in there? So, you want to keep your basics in there, your math, your science, your history, your, geography, all of those. So you want to keep all of those, but what else can you add? Like what community service can be added? Like I said, don't forget driver's ed. Don't forget any of those. I want to say that driver's ed was, because we spent a whole semester when I was in high school on driver's ed. So I know it was at least worth 1 credit. So you want to look at anything like that and see what you can count. There's a lot of things that you can count. And, if you're in a state where you've got some regulation, then you definitely want to see what the requirements are. If you Google, there is a site that has the state requirements, the state graduation credit requirements for each state. And I was blown away by the differences. Like I said, California was like the lowest, which I was completely shocked by because you would never guess that. But it ranges from 13 credits to 26 credits, and depending on the state that you're in. And it may, 26 I was thinking was the top. So how credits are counted will sort of change to how you're, how you're doing things and how you're keeping track. So once you have come up with a method, stick with it. You want to always sort of do the same thing. You want to always stay with that same method so that you're not changing mid-year or halfway through high school and doing things a completely different way. People ask me, what do you do about grades? As far as I'm concerned, my kids will work at it till they get an A. of what I would consider A work. So that's just my thinking of things. That's just the way I feel about it. I think that when you homeschool, you have the opportunity to take a C student to A work, and you should, because there's no reason not to. So that's my thoughts on that. So do we have any questions on transcripts before I move on to test prep?
Nope.
Okay.
We're good.
So test prep, it's really simple. Don't stress. Practice a lot. A lot. And then I would when we had to test, there was a brief time when we had to test. It was about 2 years that we had to test, because somebody snarky made us. But I would go to Barnes & Noble and buy the Common Core workbooks. So when you're testing, especially in the United States, you're going to be tested probably against Common Core standards. I know there are other places you can test. I know that if you're in a state where testing is required, some states allow you to use a mail order service. And if that's possible and that's what you're doing, I would call that testing place and say, I need some practice tests. Because the place where you're going to have struggle that we noticed right away was in terminology. So I wanted them, excuse me, to get comfortable with the terminology. They didn't have any problems with the work once they understood what the words were meaning. So you want to get them comfortable with that terminology. I would not use that terminology in your everyday teaching, just because I think it's stiff. Nobody wants to learn like that. That's why you're homeschooling. So but I would get the practice tests. And like I said, the Common Core workbooks that we got at Barnes & Noble were what we needed, and it allowed them to test really well. But what we did was we would get the test. I would decide, okay, this is the window. Okay, 1 second. This is the window that we are testing in. And it might be, here's the test is on March 30th. So by March 5th, we're practicing, at least we're going to do a baseline of where everybody's at. And so you might give everybody a baseline test. And then you can see what areas they need to improve on. And then you work on those areas weekly until you test. And that helps it not be so stressful. What was your question?
I have a few things.
Sure.
Becca Barrett says, any website you recommend that you know is accurate for graduation requirements per state?
You know what? I just did a Google search, and then I went with the Google search. I went back. I did a Google search on state. It seems like I did state graduation requirements, and it showed the site that I went to, and I wish I had written it down because I don't have it. The site that I went to showed them each by state. And then there was a link to the State Board of Education for each state. So what you want to do is you want to go to your State Board of Education website and just find out. The other thing you could do is call your local high school district and say, how many credits do you need to graduate? Thank you. Don't make it harder than it needs to be.
And then Amanda Wayne says, I wish my mom had this information when she was homeschooling. It would have made our transition to college so much easier.
And I think things have changed a lot too.
And then Natisha Allen Loving says, I love that we have the ability to take a student from a C to an A student. I just got questioned on that, and I told them I let my child move on if I know they can do better.
Yep. I just think that I don't produce C's. We produce A's. I think, and that's not like some weird, like, I pushed my kid. That's definitely not that. It's definitely I think you could do better at this. Let's try again. We wouldn't move on into, that's the beauty of homeschooling, is if you're stuck in an algebra class with 30 other kids in a school setting, they're moving on, whether you get it or not. They're going to keep going. But at home, you have the opportunity to go, all right, well, we're going to revisit this algebra thing and see if I can figure out why you're struggling. And that's really, one of the beauties of homeschooling. And once they're at the high school level, I went round and round with this about like math at the high school level. Anything you cover is going to be covered in Math 101 in college. So just do your best. Even if you have, because I would rather have a student that still struggling with math, but really gave it his or her all heading into college. than somebody who just was like, I don't care. So that's my sort of test for whether or not I'm going to pass you, because I think that moving forward, should be dependent on whether or not you think that they can actually pass, whether or not you think they can actually do the work. And if you don't do it. Just keep working until you figure it out. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. When it comes to testing, stop stressing. You know, if you have to test for a charter school, you have to test because of your state, go get these resources. You know, like I said, it's a trip to Barnes & Noble. I think the books were like $8.95 a piece then. They're probably more expensive now because it's been 10 years or so since we've had to do it. But get the workbooks, understand the terminology, help your child understand the terminology. And once they can do it, stop stressing. Don't make test day a freak out day. Have a good time. Go have ice cream afterwards. Make sure you get plenty of sleep. You're going to stress way more than they are, but if you're stressing, guess what? They're going to pick up on it. So just be like, I don't care how you do on this. I do remember when I was we were in a public school charter, I remember just being like, what happens if they don't do well? And the teacher looked at me, she said, nobody gets kicked out of public school. And this is a charter, it's public school. And I remember thinking, oh, okay. Yes.
Peggy says, in our homeschool, we worked to mastery. When my children went to public in high school, they were surprised that the teachers accepted lower grades.
I am constantly surprised at what people will accept. Go ahead.
Lennon Clark says, what about testing younger kids? In Oregon, they are supposed to test in 3rd, 5th, 8th,
Yeah.
and 10th.
So that's why I'm saying, Lennon, go get the Common Core workbooks, test books at Barnes & Noble. And it doesn't matter. There's like 5 different brands. They're all the same. The Common Core is the same. Just go get those and sit down with them. I would say if your test date is like March 30th, like I said, then you want to start by March 5th. And I would just do a baseline first. The baseline will tell you what you need to work on. So do the baseline test and make sure they understand the terminology, and then go from there. And don't stress. You know, I really and truly believe that when you look at the Common Core curriculum, Waldorf fits it in every way. The curriculum and the standards are different, so you don't have to, and I said curriculum, but I meant standards. Waldorf meets the standards in every way. You just have to know how to put things together and read the standard, not the curriculum. So if somebody says, do you adhere to the Common Core? I go, yeah. We need to have a conversation about whether or not you're talking about the Common Core curriculum, which is used by some schools, or the Common Core standards, which is used by the state. So you can absolutely meet those standards. And yeah. Anyway, anything else over there?
We're good here.
All right, you guys. I hope you have a great day.